every time I think about the book, it's one of the things that I found just so engrossing. When I read it, I almost got chills. So hopefully I do it justice, as I am John Twelvehawks. So, Gabriel had crossed over. His light passed through 4 barriers. Opening his eyes, he found himself standing at the top of a staircase in an old house. He was alone. The house was quiet. A faint gray light bled through a narrow window. An old-fashioned parlor table was on the landing behind him. A vase with a silk rose was on the table, and Gabriel touched the stiff, smooth petals. The rose in the vase and the room that surrounded him were as false as the objects in his own world. Only the light was permanent and real. His body and clothes were ghost images that had followed him to this place. Gabriel pulled back the jade sword a few inches out of the scabbard, and its steel blade gleamed with silver energy. As he pushed back the lace curtains and peered out the windows, it was early in the evening, just after sunset. He was in a city with sidewalks and shade trees. A line of row houses was on the other side of the street, and the area reminded him of the brownstone neighborhoods in New York City or Baltimore. Lights were on a few of the apartments, and the window shades had a soft yellow color like pieces of old parchment. Gabriel rearranged the sword so that the strap was over one shoulder and the scabbard was touching his back. As quietly as possible, he climbed down the staircase to the 3rd floor. He pushed open one of the doors expecting to be attacked and discovered an empty bedroom. All of the furniture was heavy and dark. A large dresser with brass fittings and a bed with a carved wooden frame. The room had an old-fashioned look that reminded him of the movies set in the 1920s. He couldn't find a clock radio or a television set, nothing new and bright and gleaming. On the 2nd floor, he heard the sound of a piano coming from below. The music was slow and sad, a simple melody, repeated with slight variations. Gabriel tried not to make the stairs creak as he climbed down the last flight. On the ground floor, an open doorway led into a dining room with a long table and 6 high-backed chairs. Waxed fruit was in a bowl on the sideboard. Crossing the hallway, he passed through a study with leather chairs and one solitary reading lamp, then entered the rear parlor. A woman sat with her back to the doorway playing an upright piano. She had gray hair and wore a long black skirt and a lavender blouse with puffy sleeves. When Gabriel stepped toward the woman, the floor creaked and she glanced over her shoulder. Her face startled him. It was emaciated and pale, as if she had been locked up in the house and left to starve. Only her eyes were alive, bright and intense. They stared at him. She was surprised, not frightened, that a stranger had appeared in the room. "Who are you?" the woman asked. "I've never seen you before." "My name is Gabriel. Could you tell me the name of this place?" Her black skirt made a rustling sound as she approached him. "You look different, Gabriel. You must be new." "Yes, I guess that's right." He stepped back from the woman, but she followed him. "I'm sorry to be in your house." "Oh, you mustn't be sorry at all." Before he could stop her, the woman grabbed his right hand. A look of wonder appeared on her face. "Your skin is warm. How is that possible?" Gabriel tried to pull away, but the woman held him with a strength that didn't seem to match her frail body. Trembling slightly, she leaned down and kissed the back of his hand. Gabriel felt cold lips touch his skin and a sharp pain. He yanked his hand back and saw that it was bleeding. A small drop of blood, his blood, was on the corner of the woman's mouth. She touched the blood with her forefinger and studied its bright red color, then placed her finger in her mouth. Ecstatic, possessed with pleasure, she shrilled and closed her eyes. Gabriel hurried out of the room and down the hall to the front door. He fumbled with the latch, then was outside on the sidewalk. That is one of my most adored parts of this book, because there was nothing about it that had anything to do with any of the real, intrinsic parts of the concept, but it was such artistic writing that you were in the room there with him and her, and you could feel the fear in him.
Well, your research results support the philosophy of the Evergreen Foundation. The people who run the foundation believe that each human being is an autonomous biological unit. Our brain is a little organic computer with its processing capabilities determined by genetic inheritance. During our lifetime, we fill our brain with learned knowledge and conditioned responses to different experiences. When we die, our brain computer is destroyed along with all its data and operating programs. Richardson nodded. I think that's clear. Well, it's a wonderful theory, Lawrence said. Unfortunately, it's not true. We've discovered that a fragment of energy exists inside every living thing, independent of the brain or body. This energy enters each plant or animal when they're born. It leaves us when we die. Richardson tried not to smile. Oh, you're talking about the human soul. We call it the light. It seems to follow the laws of quantum theory. Call it whatever you want, Mr. Takawa. I don't particularly care. Let's assume for a moment that we do have a soul. It's in us when we're alive. It departs when we die. Even if we accept a soul, it has no relevance to our lives. I mean, we can't do anything with the soul. Measure it, verify it, take it out, place it in a jar. Well, a group of people called the travelers are able to control their light and send it out of their body. I don't believe in any of that spiritual nonsense. That can't be proven in an experiment. Read this and see what you think. Lawrence placed the green binder on the table. I'll be back in a while. Takawa walked out, and once again Richardson was alone. The conversation was so strange and unexpected that the neurologist didn't know how to react. Travelers? Light? Why was the employee of a scientific organization using such mystical terms? Dr. Richardson lightly touched the cover of the green binder with the tips of his fingers, as if the contents would burn him. He took a deep breath, turned to the first page, and began to read.